There is something profoundly dangerous about the person who is always trying to be good. You may think this is a paradox. After all, goodness is the foundation of our religions, our cultures, our aspirations. But what I have observed in the consulting room and what I have seen in my own dreams and encounters with the unconscious is this. When a man or a woman is determined to be only good, to be always kind, always gentle, always selfless, they cast a long and terrible shadow behind them. And that shadow does not disappear simply because they will it away. In fact, the brighter the persona, more polished, praised and protected, the darker the unconscious counterpart becomes. You see, the psyche cannot be deceived. You can play the part of the saint to the world, but your soul knows the truth. If your kindness is a disguise, your unconscious will know. If your generosity is a mask for control, your dreams will speak it. If your humility is secretly a plea for validation, your shadow will throb with resentment until it leaks through your actions like blood through linen. When I speak of the shadow side of kindness, I do not mean that kindness itself is false. I mean that when kindness is compulsive, when it is used to avoid conflict, deny anger, gain approval, or manipulate intimacy, it ceases to be a virtue and becomes a psychological defense against the complexity of your own soul. Many so-called good people are in fact terrified of their own aggression. They have exiled their rage into the unconscious, and that rage festers there, unseen but not inactive. It becomes passive aggression. It becomes martyrdom. It becomes judgment masked as concern. It becomes niceness that suffocates. And it becomes, most tragically, a kind of moral superiority that cuts deeper than any overt cruelty. I once worked with a woman who was loved by everyone. She was kind to her neighbors, patient with her students, endlessly giving to her family. But her dreams were filled with violence. Snakes attacking children, wolves gnawing her arms, her own voice screaming and echoing from dark halls. She was horrified. "This isn't who I am," she said. "But," I told her gently, "it is who you also are." She had spent her life building a fortress of goodness, and inside that fortress she was starving. Her kindness had become a prison. The shadow does not emerge only in criminals and monsters. It emerges most forcefully in those who are unwilling to admit they have one. And this is the root of the danger, because when we deny our darkness, it does not disappear, it projects. We begin to see the badness in others. We judge, we condemn, we fix, we rescue. We unconsciously select partners, friends, and enemies who embody the very qualities we have buried in ourselves, and this keeps us blind. It keeps us morally righteous while internally fragmented. It allows us to be praised by the world while remaining unknown to ourselves. The truly dangerous person is not the one who knows their hatred, their jealousy, their hunger for power. It is the one who pretends they have none. Kindness, in its awakened form, is fierce and clear. It is not afraid of conflict. It does not silence itself to be liked. It is not born from guilt, but from integrity. It is not compulsive. It is chosen. But most of what we call kindness is not that. It is the personnel, the mask we wear to hide what we believe is unacceptable. And what is unacceptable is almost always what we were taught to fear in childhood. The little boy who learned that anger meant punishment becomes the man who apologizes for everything. The little girl who was rewarded for silence and sweetness becomes the woman who cannot say no. The child who was told they were only lovable when good grows into the adult who sacrifices everything to be seen as worthy. But the psyche remembers, and it is the dreams that speak first. When the unconscious tires of your pretense, it sends symbols. It sends you biting dogs, burning houses, screaming infants, broken mirrors. You wake unsettled, and you dismiss it. But the unconscious does not care for your dismissals. It will not stop speaking. I once dreamt of a priest kneeling in a chapel, blood dripping from his sleeves. In the dream he kept saying, "I've done everything right." And yet the floor beneath him opened into a black abyss. That is the image of the overly good man lost in his own denial. He has followed the rules, but betrayed his own soul. The rules cannot save you from yourself. To be good in the eyes of society is easy. To be whole in the eyes of the self, that is the work. The self does not ask you to be nice. It asks you to be real. It asks you to integrate all that you are, not just the pleasing parts, but the hungry, the angry, the grieving, the lustful, the wild. And until you do, your kindness will carry a wound, a hidden agenda, a tension that those around you can feel, even if they don't understand it. True goodness arises not from suppression, but from integration. When you have met your own shadow, when you have wept with it, wrestled with it, made peace with it, then your kindness becomes a choice, not a compulsion. It is no longer a performance. It is a presence. And from that presence, others can feel safe, not because you are perfect, but because you are true. When false kindness becomes a way of life, it creates not peace, but tension, a brittle layer of moralism stretched over a boiling core of unconscious conflict. The danger is not just internal. It extends outward into the very fabric of relationships, communities, and even nations. For what is not acknowledged within is always projected without. And projection, though unconscious, can become a collective weapon. Have you noticed how the good person often becomes the harshest judge? How the most kind-hearted will whisper with venom about those who seem selfish, angry, or inappropriate? This is not moral insight. This is the shadow at work, your own disowned fire taking form in the figures you condemn. Projection is the psyche's attempt to avoid the difficult work of self-confrontation. What I reject in myself, I will find in the other. And so, the man who cannot accept his need for power will call others manipulative. The woman who cannot face her suppressed fury will call others too much. The child who was taught never to be selfish becomes the adult who sees everyone else as self-absorbed while secretly longing to claim her own space. This is not evil, this is unconsciousness. But unconsciousness, when combined with goodness, becomes righteousness. And righteousness, when inflated, becomes cruelty dressed as concern. You see, when we believe ourselves to be wholly good, we grant ourselves moral license. Because I am kind, we think my judgments are justified. But the unconscious does not care for your justifications. It knows the truth. It knows that beneath your condemnation lies envy. That beneath your perfection lies exhaustion. That beneath your smiling silence lies a scream. The dream will reveal it first. One patient, a nurse, came to me overwhelmed. Everyone called her an angel. She worked extra shifts. She took care of her dying mother. She was always available. But she was beginning to resent her patients. She was snapping at her children. She had recurring dreams of drowning babies, always trying to save them, always failing. She thought she was losing her mind. But I told her, you are not losing your mind. You are losing your mask. And that is a blessing, if you can bear it. Her dream was not horror. It was initiation. The drowning child was her own neglected soul, fragile, overwhelmed, dying for attention. And the one who could not save it was the personate, caregiver, the helper, the one who believed she must always be strong. The dream was not telling her she was bad, it was telling her she was human. And to be human is to be everything light and shadow, love and rage, giving and taking. But in the pursuit of being good, we forget this. We turn ourselves into ideals. We sacrifice authenticity on the altar of approval. And the soul begins to revolt. The revolt is subtle at first. Fatigue, vague, resentment, the haunting sense that you are being used, unseen, drained. But then it becomes sharper. Recurring illnesses, irritability, depression, even spiritual crisis. And at the center of this collapse is often the unspoken truth. I don't want to be good anymore. I want to be real. This moment, painful as it is sacred. Because now you stand at the threshold. You can return to the mask, paste it back on with affirmations and obligations, or you can descend into the underworld of the self, where the real work begins. And it is here that we meet the archetypes. The people pleaser is often possessed by the archetype of the rescuer, also known as a savior. On the surface, this figure is noble. They help, they give, they heal. But in its shadow form, the rescuer becomes addicted to saving others as a way to avoid their own pain. They need others to be broken so they can feel needed. They become overextended, resentful, manipulative. Their kindness has become currency. To free yourself from this possession, you must ask, who am I when no one needs me? That question terrifies the false self, but it liberates the soul. The martyr is another shadowed archetype that hides behind goodness. It says, I will suffer so others can be well. It glorifies sacrifice. It turns exhaustion into identity. But the martyr always carries a hidden bitterness. They suffer in silence, then blame others for not seeing their pain. Their giving is a bargain. And when the bargain is not reciprocated, they collapse or explode. The antidote to the martyr is not selfishness. It is self-responsibility. To say, I give only what I choose to give. And I do not abandon myself in the process. Then there is the innocente, one who insists, I don't have a dark side. They stay sweet, soft, accommodating. They are often the most liked. But behind their eyes is a terror of their own depth. They fear anger, sexuality, power. They are trapped in the golden light of childhood. But the child cannot rule the kingdom. The adult must be born. For the innocent, the initiation is the descent into experience, the willingness to be messy, to make mistakes, to say no, to face conflict. Only then can their goodness become rooted in reality. And then we encounter the mother archetype, especially powerful in women, conditioned to care for everyone but themselves. The shadow of the mother is not cruelty, it is enmeshment. The desire to nurture becomes control. The need to be loved becomes the compulsion to be indispensable. And the children of such kindness often grow suffocated, confused, dependent. To reclaim the true mother is to learn sacred detachment, to love without clinging, to support without sacrificing identity. All of these patterns are not flaws. They are adaptations, ways we learn to survive in a world that rewarded performance over presence. But they are not sustainable. Eventually, the soul demands something more. It wants integration. It wants truth. It wants the human being, not the role. And the dream will lead you there. If you keep dreaming of betrayal, perhaps you have betrayed yourself. If you keep dreaming of being voiceless, perhaps your silence is not a virtue, it is a wound. If you keep dreaming of wild animals, perhaps your instincts are tired of being caged. The unconscious speaks in images, not morals. It is not interested in whether you are good, it is interested in whether you are whole. And wholeness begins when you can say, I am kind and I am capable of harm, I am giving and I need, I am light and I am shadow. This is not duality, this is truth. And from that truth, your kindness becomes something else entirely. It becomes fierce, not fragile, clear, not compulsive, present, not performative. It no longer asks, do you like me? It asks, is this real? That shift is the beginning of power, not domination, but self-possession. And it is this kind of human that brings healing to the world. Not the one who performs goodness, but the one who embodies reality. Now we must tread further into the inner sanctum of those feelings we were told to never touch what society calls negative, but what the soul calls necessary. Anger, envy, selfishness, pride. These are not poisons unless they are denied. When denied, they fester in the unconscious. When denied, they grow teeth in your dreams. When denied, they enter your life through projection, disease, and despair. Let us speak first of anger, the emotion most repressed by the kind person. Not because they are incapable of it, but because they have been told it is wrong, disruptive, or unloving. But Anger is none of these things. Anger is clarity. Anger is boundary. Anger is sacred fire. When we repress it, we lose our instincts. We lose the capacity to say, this is enough. I am not a vessel for your chaos. I exist. You cannot be truly kind until you can also say no. The dream will often show repressed anger as fire, snakes, sudden attacks, or dangerous storms. These are not punishments. They are warnings. The psyche is telling you something in you has been silenced too long. I recall a man who dreamed of being chased by a bear through his childhood home. He thought it was fear, but I told him, the bear is your strength, your aggression, your natural protector. You are not being chased, you are being summoned. And until you stop running, the dream will not let you rest. To integrate anger does not mean to become hostile. It means to allow the voice within you that says, I matter too. That voice is not the enemy of kindness, it is its root. For without it, your kindness is always at risk of becoming self-erasure. Now, consider envy another impolite emotion. The good person never admits envy. They smile, they praise, but in the quiet, they ache. They feel unseen, left behind, not chosen. And instead of feeling it directly, they judge others, or they martyr themselves, or they overcompensate. But envy too is a teacher. Envy shows you what you desire and have denied yourself. Envy says, there is something alive in them that is dying in you. You must listen. In the dream, envy may appear as theft, as loss, as humiliation. A woman once dreamt of watching her sister win an award while she stood in the audience naked. She wept upon waking, ashamed. But I told her, this dream is not a punishment. It is a longing. Your inner world is asking, why do you hide your brilliance? When you honor envy, you do not act from it. You learn from it. You use it to trace the outlines of your unlived life. Now, we must touch the third forbidden emotion, selfishness. The good person fears this above all else. To be selfish is to betray the role, and so they give too much. They say yes when they mean no. They anticipate everyone's needs but their own, and then they call this virtue. But the unconscious sees through the charade. It knows that what is not given freely becomes poison. Dreams of selfishness often emerge as hoarding, as locked doors, as ignored children. The soul cries out for space, for solitude, for sovereignty. A man came to me once who dreamt of a crying dog trapped in a cage. He could not reach it. He thought it meant he had failed someone. But the dog, I said, was himself his desire to be left alone, to have something of his own, to stop giving without rest. And until he listened, that cage would remain locked. To be selfish in the right way is not a sin, it is a necessity. You cannot pour from an empty vessel. You cannot give what you do not own. The self wants to be heard, not sacrificed. And what of pride? Not the inflation of narcissism, but the pride that says, I know who I am, and I will not shrink to make you comfortable. That is not arrogance, that is dignity. And it is the final step in reclaiming your authenticity. Many kind people remain small because they believe it is humble. But humility without truth is just self-diminishment. The dream may show this as shrinking in crowds, as being voiceless, as trying to scream with no sound. These are not random. They are the soul's way of saying, stand up, speak, take space, shine without apology. When you integrate these shadowed qualities, anger, envy, selfishness, pride, you begin to transform. Your kindness grows roots. It becomes embodied. It becomes discerning. You are no longer kind because you must be. You are kind because you choose to be, from a place that includes all of you. That is wholeness, and that wholeness radiates. It is felt in the way you walk, in the boundaries you set, in the gaze that sees through performance and welcomes what is real. No one can trust a person who is always good, but we can trust the one who is true, who has looked into their own abyss and emerged with gold? Who has made peace with their contradictions? Who has met their demons and offered them tea? Because that person cannot be manipulated. That person does not give to be liked. That person does not hide behind kindness. They stand in the fullness of their humanity. And from that fullness they offer the world something rare, not perfection, but presence. Now we have arrived at the innermost threshold, the place where the light you call goodness and the darkness you call shadow must be introduced not as enemies, but as long-lost siblings. They are not at war, except in the mind that has not yet seen. The self contains them both, and the work of individuation is not to favor one over the other, but to bring them into union. You cannot become whole by amputating parts of your being. That is what the ego tries to do, create a self-image of only what is palatable, pleasing, socially affirmed. But the soul rebels against such censorship. The soul wants truth, not performance. And in the dream, the soul tells you over and over again, you are more than what you pretend to be. So the kind person who is secretly resentful must meet the one inside them who longs to scream. The gentle soul who has never raised their voice must one day speak with fire. The good man who has never allowed himself to cry must fall to his knees in his own grief. The mother who never wanted to leave must confess that sometimes she dreams of running away. These moments are not breakdown, they are breakthrough. You see, the shadow does not come to destroy, it comes to complete, to bring back what was disowned, disfigured, discredited. And when you finally welcome it not in theory, but in your trembling body, you begin to change in a way that no mask can imitate. You do not become less kind, you become truly kind, because your kindness is now grounded in reality. You know what it costs, you know what it holds. You are not afraid to be fierce when necessary, or to say no with compassion, or to hold someone without needing to fix them. You no longer need to be liked to offer love. You no longer need to be needed to stay present. You no longer give from depletion, but from wholeness. This is what I mean by the alchemy of the psyche. The light and the dark must meet, melt, and transform. It is not a simple union, it is a crucible, and you must pass through it again and again. Each time you think you've become whole, the soul shows you another fragment, another orphaned emotion, another truth too wild for your persona. And each time you have the choice to turn away or to integrate. This path is not for the faint of heart, but it is the only one that leads home. Because the self in its fullness is not a good person. The self is a living totality. It holds your rage, your tenderness, your cunning, your wisdom, your terror.